Today is the day, or maybe it isn't. I don't really know because I'm in the present and you guys are watching from the future. The goal is to dyno this thing in 2 days. I don't know what's gonna happen. There are some noises that are concerning me that may or may not be engine knocking. But yeah, hopefully we're dynoing this thing. You guys can tell by the title. Go ahead and laugh at me if we're not dynoing it, or get excited if we are dynoing it. In order to make it to the dyno, we've got a lot of things to do. Over here, we have some brakes that I kind of want to install. Boost controller, we gotta get a boost source for the boost controller. The most important thing is to install that boost controller, because without it, we're gonna make infinite boost and engine go boom. I've already done that once. I don't wanna do it again. The second most important thing, oil leaks. Seems like most of them are coming from the oil pan, but it also seems like the front main's leaking pretty bad. The next thing is to fix the intercooler, because I don't think it's cooling. It's kind of hard to tell, but on a hot day, just driving around, intake temps are getting up to like 120 degrees, which with a super efficient intercooler like we have, that shouldn't be happening. We gotta put a check valve in the brake booster line, we gotta fix exhaust leaks, do an alignment, replace the oil sensor because the temp part isn't working, do a bolt check, put the brakes on, bleed the brakes, bleed the clutch, and fix some holes in the firewall. From here down, that's all optional. All this stuff, not optional. So, let's get to work, shall we? A lot of you guys thought that I hard mounted the intercooler piping, but these Mishimoto quick clamps have play in them. They're built-in play, but they are sealed perfectly. We gotta take off this intercooler pipe to put a boost reference in it. Watch how long that takes. That's why these things are awesome.
Where'd you get that hoodie at?
Huh?
That hoodie.
Where'd I get this hoodie? PowerJDM.com, and you can enter for your chance to win the mid-engine Eclipse by spending $1 at PowerJDM.com on the hoodie or on car parts. I hope you guys are proud of me, because normally I just JB weld my vacuum sources onto my intercooler piping. But I actually tapped it and did it the proper way. So this thing back in there and then do the vacuum lines and stuff. Just like that, we got our nice manual boost controller all mounted up properly. Vacuum lines ran properly. Now the Link ECU did have a electronic boost controller option to control it through the ECU. I will have a manual boost controller just for simplicity. Now whoever wins the car, they can turn up the boost if they want, they can turn it down if they want. It was just a twist of a knob. Boost controller is done. Now we're gonna do the oil leaks and see if this thing's knocking. Caleb, why didn't you check to see if it's knocking before you did the boost controller? Isn't that more important? You can make boost on a knocking motor, but you can't, the motor can't survive without a boost controller. So what we're gonna do is, we're gonna drop the oil pan. That will allow us to fix the oil leak on the oil pan. Then we can also check all the rods and see if there's any metal in the oil pan. I've got an oil filter cutter, so I can cut the oil filter off and see if there's anything in that too. And this will give us an opportunity to do an oil change, which, the car only has like 200 miles on it. The motor only has like 200 miles on it. But better safe than sorry. Looks like some nice clean oil there. Yeah, do you see that? Can you see that on camera? Can you see the glittery? Glitter. Looks like shining stars in the sky, airplanes, the night sky, shooting stars. If it's damaged, it's probably from us not priming the oil pump and then cranking it so long without oil pressure. Using crappy assembly lube, because that assembly lube was not thick. face when your motor might be blown up. So this bad boy allows you to cut open an oil filter without introducing metal debris in it. Because you could sawzall it open, but then obviously metal gets in there. There's some debris in here, which obviously is not a good sign. It's hard to tell what it is though. I don't think this is conclusive enough. There's definitely lots of stuff in the fins of the filter itself. The noise that it was making, I wish I got a good video of it. I'll look through, maybe I do. But it was like, it did kind of sound like knock, but it was very inconsistent, and when you gave it RPM, it went away. Normally, if it's knocking badly, like if your rod bearing spun, you know, when you rev it, it like it's really loud. So I kind of thought it was just the injectors or some Valvetrain noise. We'll find out in a second though. Oh no, it does look bad. Kind of. It doesn't look terrible. You can see a few chunks, quite a few chunks of what looks like bronze. It's kind of hard to tell. That looks like a piece of steel or something. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the caps off of all the rods. If it's just a rod bearing, we might be able to get away with just replacing the bearings in the car. There wasn't enough metal in like the oil filter and stuff for me to be concerned that anything else would be damaged, but. Problem is, I don't find something that's wrong, then what? Do we send it? Do we take it all apart? Try to find the culprit? All right, well, it's all put back together, torque's down. All the bearings looked, I mean, fine. They don't look amazing, but they look about what I remember them looking when we checked them before. I don't know what the stuff in the oil is. I don't know if it's from the bearings, from something else, or if it was maybe just in this pan already and we just didn't notice it. So we're gonna go ahead, put it all back together, reseal the oil pan, hopefully fix the leaks, and then move on to the next thing. Whoever wins this, I hope you put a big ball bearing turbo on this thing and then put some big cams in it. Cause man, hearing like the loping 4G63 out of this thing would be so sick. But I don't have enough money or time to do that. I already built the entire other dang thing. While we wait for the gasket maker on the oil pan to dry, I'm gonna go ahead and block off some of the holes in the firewall. oil back into the car. Gonna go ahead and crank it over, let it build some oil pressure, and then fire her up. Like it's coming from the bottom end, that noise. It only does it at idle. This is now all optional. The main priority, fix. I'm sure you can hear that noise through the camera. That ain't good. And I'm a little confused because we just checked the bottom end and everything looked good, didn't have any play in it. I even kind of checked to see if there's play between the piston and the top of the rod. It all seemed fine. I sent my engine building friend a few pictures of all the bearings, and he said that, you know, they're not amazing, but they look like they should run smoothly. So we have a few things we're gonna check. We're gonna pull off the timing cover, see if any of the timing tensioners or anything like that is making noise. And after that, we're gonna pull off the valve cover and go from there. If we can't figure it out by today, we're missing the dyno. So let's get to work. Took off all the timing stuff so we can have access to everything. I'm gonna fire it up and see if we can determine where the noise is coming from, if it's from the front. It's definitely not coming from the front, but listening through the wheel well, it almost sounds like it's coming from the top end, not the bottom end. So, next step, I'm gonna take the valve cover off, see if there's any surprises under there. This thing's actually quite convenient to work on because you have like, it's got like its own little chair and like its own little shelves. Way more comfortable to work on this thing now than when it was front engine. That's actually why I did the swap, you know. It wasn't because the brake mass is on there, it's because I wanted to be able to sit down in my engine bay while working on the engine because it has blown up for the second time. It's cool, you can see the oil being pumped out when I crank it over. Good news and bad news. Good news, head, valve train, all that looks perfectly fine. Bad news, head, valve train, all that looks perfectly fine. What frustrates me even more is that the other 4G63 had like 2 spun bearings, all the other bearings were completely destroyed, pickup tube was covered in a layer of metal, and it was perfectly quiet, made no noise, showed no signs of being damaged. This one's the opposite. All the bearings look fine, and yet it's knocking. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should just keep driving it to see if it goes away, it gets worse. I don't know if I should pull the motor and rebuild it. Well, ain't nobody got time for that. The last thing we're gonna check, I'm gonna let it idle, and then I'm gonna go through the gears and see if the noise changes at all. Pushing the clutch in and out, going through different gears. the next day and we got our new lifters. Now these are the revised version of the lifters. The factory lifters on 4Gs and some of the earlier Mitsubishis aren't good. They make noise, they do bad things. And so a company, an aftermarket company, made better ones. And this is like a very common thing to replace. So I'm hoping that this might be the issue of our noise. We also have a new timing tensioner, which also hopefully might be the issue. We're gonna properly bleed these lifters because I didn't properly bleed the last ones. So you just kind of squirt all the oil out, make sure that they compress nicely. Then we'll throw them in, put the timing stuff back together, and hopefully our 4G is not blown up. It'll be a real shame if I spent 200 bucks on parts for my blown motor. So we got the Valvetrain all put back together. We got the motor timed with a new tensioner. It feels really smooth, but you know. Ooh, I'm really excited to start this thing. You know. Last bolt tightened. I'm pretty nervous because I think it's gonna keep knocking. We're gonna crank it over, let the lifters fill with oil, let the oil pressure build, then we'll plug the injectors in and hopefully hear a nice smooth 4G. Still there, but we're gonna take it for a drive, let it get up to operating temp, go through the revs, see what happens. The thing that sucks is that this thing is driving so nicely. I was so excited to get it tuned, rip on it a little bit, and then, you know, tear it apart to paint it, but center force clutches freaking killed it. This is like one of their most aggressive clutches, and it's so smooth. It feels like OEM. And then the noises are so good too. Dude, I care less giving it some more throttle because I think it's blown up anyway, you know. So good. Worst case scenario, if the motor is blown up, we're gonna buy a new one from somewhere. We don't have time to rebuild it. At least everything else is already working, so we can tear it all apart, get it painted, so that way when we do finally get a new motor, it's just ready to go in. So nicely, but it's blown up. It's still making the noise, but it's so hard, man. This is what I'd like to call a shaft. The noise is really so quiet in person that if we hadn't found metal in the oil pan and the filter, I would probably just, you know, ignore it and send it. But with the situation that we're in now, there's clearly something wrong in the bottom end. And since we checked all the bottom end bearings and they're more or less fine, I'm 90% sure it's one of the wrist pins, the place where the piston connects to the rod. You know, I posted the video of it knocking on a DSM page, and that's what a lot of people said, is wrist pin. A lot of people also said that it'd probably be fine, just send it. But being that this isn't gonna be my car, I can't just leave it as it is. You know, the motor might be good for a year at 400 horsepower, or it might be good for a week. Can't take that chance. See, what I think happened, this motor was sitting, it was fine, and I checked all the bottom end bearings, you know, put assembly lube on them, couldn't put any lube on the wrist pins or anywhere else in the motor. Wouldn't have been a problem if this thing cranked up and made oil pressure right away, but then we didn't prime the oil pump, we cranked it for a few minutes without oil pressure, and that probably scored one of the wrist pins, and then over the course of the 200 miles of driving it, it's gotten bad enough where now it's knocking. And I wish we would have time to just rebuild this one, because then we have something that we know is gonna be good. It's my second 4G. Both the 4Gs I've had have been used, and that's, you know, not a great way to buy motors, used and using them. But every machine shop in the area has a wait of at least 6 weeks, and this thing's gotta be done in 2. So I'm gonna look for another 6-bolt 4G. I'm gonna just buy a really nice ass motor. I'm gonna spend the money to buy one that I know is running good, that's fully assembled, that doesn't have any questions about it, which also sucks because this car sucked a lot of resources out of me. And I know a lot of you guys are saying, why don't you just keep it? You know, cancel the giveaway. That's not how it works. I can't just cancel a giveaway. I also want to give it away. I mean, somebody's going to enjoy this thing so much. It just sucks that now there's gonna be even a bigger delay finishing it. I'm gonna get to enjoy it less, but there's nothing we can do about it at this point. Before we do anything else, I'm gonna drain the oil again, check the oil filter again. Hopefully we find metal in it, because then that'll confirm our suspicions, and then we can start tearing this thing apart. It had to come apart anyway. You know, we have to paint everything, as I mentioned, so this is a good time to do it. I had hoped to get the car tuned before tearing it apart, but we at least know everything's working, so we don't have to add anything. All the stuff we paint will look pretty and stay pretty. But let's go ahead, drain the oil, see what we find. Well, there wasn't any metal in the actual filter element, but in the drain pan, you can see some pieces of metal here. And I made sure it was clean this time before we poured anything in it. And the oil is just super glittery. It's like a glitter bomb. So that oil was after only like 3 heat cycles. So there's definitely something wrong. It's definitely knocking. So, cool thing is it only took us like 2 hours to pull this motor, like without hustling. We were kind of screwing off and, you know, just having fun, and it's already out. So to commemorate this beautiful motor and to help me afford a new motor and other things, Power JDM came up with the idea to do a sale on all the giveaway merch on the website. Hopefully, you know, help with getting a new motor. I want to make it very clear that I'm getting a new motor, and this thing is gonna be running and driving and ripping by the end of May. So if you use code RIP4G63 over on PowerJDM.com, you'll get 20% off any of the merch there, but you'll still get entries based off the MSRP of the stuff. So say you spend $100, but you use the code to only pay $80, you'll still get 100 entries. Now, let's throw this thing on the engine stand and tear it apart, see if we can find something. I really hope we can find something, because if this thing pulls like an LS where I disassemble it thinking it's rod knock and it's just something simple, I'm gonna lose it. Definitely gonna lose it. Let's hope one of these, something is real fucked up. There we go. I really want to just jump to taking the pistons and rods out and see if there's any damage there, but I made that mistake with the LS. So I'm gonna check literally everything before taking the bottom end apart. We're gonna take the oil pump and stuff, all the front accessories off. There's no damage in the cylinders, no damage in the head. So if all the oil pump and stuff is fine, then we'll take the bottom end apart. it is as I had feared. There's no noticeable damage anywhere. It goes to show how precise engines are. Clearly there was metal in the oil. Clearly it was knocking, but there's no visible damage anywhere. We unfortunately can't take the pistons off the rods here. You need special equipment, presses, heat thing. We can't do that here, so I'll send it to a machine shop. Probably would have been fine for a while, but can't give away a knocking car. So, new motor it is.